There is a specific and very common mistake that genuinely well-intentioned people make on the path toward healing. They understand their trauma thoroughly. They can describe the original experiences with precision and clarity. They know the developmental mechanisms that produced their patterns. They have read the books, attended the therapy, done the journaling, assembled the framework. They can explain, with genuine sophistication, exactly why they respond the way they respond, exactly where the wound came from, exactly what the adaptive self was doing and why. And the patterns continue, not because the understanding was wrong. The understanding is often genuinely accurate, not because the effort was insufficient. The effort is often extraordinary, but because understanding, however accurate, however sophisticated, however genuinely hard-won, operates at the level of the mind. And the trauma does not live primarily in the mind. Gabor Maté was precise about this distinction. He observed it with clinical consistency across decades of work with people who had done significant intellectual work on their own histories and who were genuinely bewildered by the gap between what they understood and what continued to happen in their actual experience, their actual relationships, their actual bodies. He said, and this is the central clinical observation that this entire conversation is built on, the trauma is not a story, it is a state, a specific, physiologically real, bodily held state of the nervous system that was formed in response to genuine experience and that continues to operate as a state, not as a narrative, not as a belief, not as a cognitive framework. Regardless of how accurately or completely the narrative surrounding it has been assembled, and states do not change through understanding, they change through experience, specifically through the specific, repeated, bodily felt experience of something different from what produced the state in the first place. Today, I want to give you the complete, honest, clinically grounded account of why understanding your trauma is necessary but not sufficient, and what genuine healing actually requires beyond the understanding. The first thing that needs to be understood is the specific mechanism through which trauma is held in the body rather than simply in the mind. When an experience occurs that exceeds the nervous system's capacity to process it, while remaining fully present when what is happening is more than the available resources can integrate without the specific protective mechanisms of dissociation, freezing, or the various forms of partial shutdown that the nervous system deploys in response to overwhelming experience. The experience is not processed and stored in the ordinary narrative memory system. It is held in the body, in the specific physiological state that the experience produced, the hormonal configuration, the muscular pattern, the nervous system's activation level, the immune system's functional state as a kind of embodied memory that operates independently of, and often in spite of, whatever narrative the mind subsequently constructs around it. This embodied memory does not respond to narrative. The body that is holding the physiological state of an old trauma does not update that state when the mind assembles an accurate story about how the state was produced. The story and the state are in different systems. The mind story can be entirely accurate and entirely complete, while the body continues to hold the state as though the original experience is still occurring, because in the body's system it is. The body does not know that the experience is over. It knows only the state that the experience produced, and it continues to reproduce that state in response to any present stimulus that is sufficiently similar to what produced the original state to activate the same physiological response. This is why the person who understands their trauma thoroughly continues to have the reactive response in the triggering situation. The mind knows clearly, accurately, with genuine sophistication, that the present situation is not the original one, that the partner is not the parent, that the colleague's criticism is not the teacher's contempt, that the current threat is not the original threat. The body does not know. The body is responding to the pattern recognition that its state-based memory system produces, and no amount of accurate narrative about the original experience changes what the body's pattern recognition system does when it encounters a sufficiently similar stimulus. Gabor Maté drew on the documented neuroscience of trauma to make this point with clinical precision. The work of researchers like Bessel van der Kolk, whose phrase "the body keeps the score" is perhaps the most widely recognized articulation of this understanding, provided the neurobiological grounding for what Gabor Maté was observing clinically. The specific brain structures involved in trauma memory storage, the specific mechanisms through which traumatic experience is encoded differently from ordinary experience, the specific physiological reality of a nervous system that continues to respond to old experience in new situations, regardless of what the rational mind knows about the difference between them. The second thing that needs to be understood is what genuine healing actually requires that understanding alone cannot provide. Genuine healing requires the specific, repeated, bodily felt experience of something different from what produced the trauma, not the understanding that something different is possible, not the intellectual endorsement of the proposition that the present is not the past. The actual, embodied, physiologically real experience of the nervous system, encountering what it has learned to predict as danger and discovering through direct experience, rather than through cognitive reassurance that the outcome is different from what the original learning predicted. This is why Gabor Maté placed such consistent emphasis on the relational dimension of healing. Not because talking about the trauma in a relational context is inherently healing, though genuine relational presence has genuine value, but because the specific experience of genuine relational safety, the repeated, embodied, directly felt experience of the nervous system in genuine connection with another regulated nervous system that meets its activation with attuned presence rather than with anxiety, dismissal, or its own dysregulation, is the specific experience that most directly addresses the relational origin of most developmental trauma. The trauma that was produced in relationship, the specific, bodily held state produced by the experience of a relational environment that was genuinely inadequate in specific ways, updates most genuinely through relational experience, through the accumulated, repeated, bodily felt evidence of a relational environment that provides what the original one could not through understanding that such an environment is possible, through the actual, embodied experience of being in one. This has specific and practical implications. The therapy that provides the most genuine healing is not primarily the therapy that produces the most accurate understanding. It is the therapy that provides the most genuine relational experience, the most consistent, attuned, genuinely safe relational presence that allows the nervous system to accumulate the specific evidence it needs to begin updating its foundational assessment of what genuine relationship actually contains. Now, I want to give you the 7 specific things that genuine healing requires beyond understanding, each one pointing to a different dimension of the work that the understanding, however accurate and however necessary, cannot accomplish on its own. The first thing genuine healing requires beyond understanding is genuine felt safety in the body. The body that is holding traumatic activation is not a body that feels safe. The understanding that the present is safer than the past does not produce the felt sense of safety in the body it produces. The cognitive knowledge that felt safety should be possible, and cognitive knowledge and felt experience are different things, located in different systems, producing different physiological states. Genuine felt safety, the specific, bodily present, physiologically real experience of a nervous system that has genuinely stood down from its alert position, cannot be produced through understanding. It is produced through the accumulated experience of genuine present safety, through the specific, repeated, bodily felt evidence of present moments in which the predicted danger does not materialize. Through the gradual, non-linear, genuinely slow process by which a nervous system calibrated to expect danger accumulates sufficient contrary experience to begin, at the level of the body rather than the mind, to expect something different. The second thing genuine healing requires beyond understanding is the completion of interrupted physiological processes. When the nervous system's response to a threatening experience is interrupted, when the activation that the threat produced is not allowed to complete its natural arc of activation response and resolution, the incomplete process remains in the body as held activation, not as a memory in the narrative sense, as a physiological state seeking completion. This completion cannot be produced through understanding. It requires the specific, somatic, body-level processes that allow the interrupted activation to finally complete its arc. The trembling that the body was prevented from expressing at the time of the original experience. The breath that was held in the moment of threat that was never fully released. The movement towards safety that was not available when safety was genuinely needed. These incomplete processes, when they finally have the conditions to complete in genuine safety with genuine support, at the pace that the body's own capacity for completion permits, produce a specific, physiologically real quality of release that is entirely different from the intellectual relief of finally understanding what happened. The third thing genuine healing requires beyond understanding is the development of genuine capacity for present moment embodied awareness. The trauma that is held in the body cannot be genuinely addressed by a self that is not genuinely present to the body. And the person who has experienced significant developmental trauma has very often developed a specific and understandable relationship with their own bodily experience, a degree of disconnection from internal sensation that was the nervous system's most available protection against the overwhelming quality of bodily experience during the traumatic events. This disconnection, genuinely protective in its original context, becomes a significant obstacle to genuine healing because it prevents access to the very system where the healing work most needs to happen. The healing that occurs at the level of the body requires a self that can be genuinely present to the body's experience, noticing sensation, tracking activation, attending to the felt sense of the interior experience with enough genuine tolerance for what is found there that the healing process can proceed. Developing this capacity is itself a significant and non-trivial dimension of genuine healing, and it cannot be shortcut through understanding. It requires the patient, gradual, often uncomfortable development of genuine tolerance for interior bodily experience that the trauma's disconnection prevented. The fourth thing genuine healing requires beyond understanding is genuine relational repair. The developmental trauma that is most common and most significant, the trauma of inadequate early relational experience, cannot be fully healed in isolation, because it was produced in relationship and because what it most fundamentally altered was the nervous system's learned model of what genuine relationship reliably provides. The genuine update of that model requires the specific evidence of genuine relational experience. Understanding that better relational experience is possible does not provide that evidence. The evidence must be gathered through actual relational experience, through the specific, repeated, bodily felt encounters with people who are genuinely present, genuinely attuned, genuinely consistent, and genuinely safe over enough time and in enough variety of circumstance that the nervous system's threat assessment system accumulates sufficient contrary evidence to genuinely update its foundational model. This is why Gabor Maté was consistent in his insistence that healing is fundamentally relational, not primarily an individual project accomplished through individual practice, however valuable individual practice genuinely is. A relational project that requires the specific experience of genuine relational safety that the original developmental environment failed to provide. The fifth thing genuine healing requires beyond understanding is time. The nervous system that was shaped by years or decades of specific developmental experience does not update in weeks. The understanding of the developmental history can arrive rapidly. The framework can be assembled, the narrative can be constructed, the connections can be drawn in a fraction of the time that the original experience took to produce its effects. But the genuine update of the nervous system's foundational programming moves at the pace of genuine experience, at the pace of accumulated evidence gathered over real time in real relationship, in real present moment bodily experience. This is one of the most difficult truths about genuine healing for people who have done significant intellectual work on their own histories. The understanding arrived, the framework was assembled, the narrative was constructed, and the healing has not followed at the same pace, not because the understanding was wrong, because understanding and healing are different processes operating at different speeds in different systems. Genuine healing requires the patience to stay with the experiential work long after the intellectual framework is complete, to continue showing up for the relational experiences, to continue developing the somatic awareness, to continue allowing the body's incomplete processes to gradually complete, to continue accumulating the evidence that the nervous system needs at its own pace, in its own time, through its own direct experience to genuinely update what the developmental history installed. The sixth thing genuine healing requires beyond understanding is genuine self-compassion as an ongoing practice rather than a conceptual endorsement. The person who understands their trauma can understand intellectually that self-compassion is appropriate, that the adaptive patterns that produce suffering were intelligent responses to genuine circumstances, that the self that built them deserves genuine care rather than judgment. This intellectual understanding is valuable. It is not the same as genuine self-compassion as a daily, embodied, practically applied orientation toward the self's own experience. Genuine self-compassion, the specific felt, bodily present quality of meeting one's own experience with honest, patient, genuinely kind attention, is itself a healing experience, rather than simply an intellectual position. The nervous system that is met daily and consistently with the specific quality of genuine compassionate attention from the self it belongs to is a nervous system that is accumulating the specific experience of genuine care that developmental trauma disrupted, not through understanding that it deserves such care, through the actual, repeated, bodily felt experience of receiving it. The seventh thing, the most important, the one that Gabor Maté returned to most consistently as the dimension of genuine healing that understanding most consistently fails to reach. The body must have genuine experiences of genuine aliveness that are not organized around the trauma or its healing. The person who has been engaged in significant healing work for a significant period of time can develop a specific and understandable relationship with their own experience. The ongoing attention to the wound, the continuous monitoring of the patterns, the sustained orientation of the interior life toward the healing project. These are genuinely important, and they can also become their own form of the self being organized around the trauma, now organized around its healing rather than simply its effects, but still substantially organized around it. Genuine healing produces eventually the capacity for genuine engagement with the actual life, with what is genuinely interesting, genuinely nourishing, genuinely alive in the present, that is not primarily about the healing. The creative work that is engaged with because it is genuinely compelling rather than because it is therapeutic. The relationship that is inhabited because it is genuinely sustaining rather than because it provides healing experience. The ordinary moment of genuine pleasure or genuine beauty or genuine human connection that is received completely because it is genuinely present rather than because it confirms that healing is occurring. These genuine experiences of genuine aliveness are not the reward for completed healing. They are the healing. The specific, accumulated, bodily felt evidence of a nervous system that is developing enough genuine present moment capacity to be genuinely present to what is actually good in the actual life, rather than perpetually organized, however, understandably, around what was difficult in the past. I want to close with something that Gabor Maté said about the relationship between understanding and healing that captures everything this conversation has been building toward. He said, "Understanding is the map, but the map is not the territory. And the territory, the actual lived, bodily experienced reality of genuine healing, can only be entered through genuine experience, not through more accurate maps of it. The map is necessary. The understanding of what happened, why it happened, what it produced, and what genuine healing requires is genuinely necessary. Without it, the experiential work has no adequate orientation. The territory cannot be navigated without the map, but it cannot be lived in from the map. The map and the territory are different things, and the difference between knowing about healing and actually healing, between understanding the territory and genuinely living in it, is the specific, experiential, embodied, relational, patient, ongoing work that no amount of understanding can substitute for. That work is available. It is not quick. It is not primarily intellectual. It requires the body, the relationship, the time, the compassion, and the specific quality of genuine, present moment experience that genuine nervous system change actually requires. And the privilege of a lifetime, the one Gabor Maté pointed toward with everything he had the privilege of a lifetime, is to become who you truly are, not through understanding it, through living it, in the body, in genuine relationship, in the specific, ordinary, completely available present moment that is the only place genuine healing has ever actually occurred.